Think about this. And at 15 cents a bushel, had a heck of a time making a living. So, what'd they do? They made whiskey and did really well at it. In fact, there were some whiskeys that were made in western Sedgwick County that were quite famous in Chicago. One was Andale Rye.
Running low on fuel shouldn't slow you down. That's where Juice Fuel comes in. Wichita's convenient mobile fueling service that brings the gas station straight to you. Whether you're managing a fleet, running a job site, or just don't have time to stop and fill up, Juice Fuel delivers fuel directly to your vehicles, saving you time, money, and hassle. No detours, no downtime, no waiting in line. Download the Juice Fuel app, visit juicefuel.com/Wichita, or give them a call at 316-402-2246 to learn more. Are we live? Are we ready, bud? Okay. All right. We can jump right into it, sir. You ready?
Good, sure.
Thank you for taking the time to meet with us.
Of course.
You know, no pun intended, but I wanted to tip my cap to you on 50 plus years as
Thanks.
a local business in Wichita. That's really admirable.
Well, it's been a long, hard stride. I've loved it. It's cool.
Awesome. So you got into the hat business at 17.
15, actually.
15?
Yes.
Wow.
Met an old man at the dry cleaners. He put me to work because I was picky about my hats. So I came in and he said, "Why don't you go do it yourself?" And he taught me how to do it.
Wow.
Over by North High School.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right in our backyard.
Yep.
And you built one of the largest hat stores in the United States.
Yep.
Top 3 in the country.
Correct.
How do they measure largest hat store? By volume of hat sales?
Me and a number of friends of mine kind of put it together where we just researched it as best we could. And, you know, I think it's pretty accurate. At least it was. Now, this is bricks and mortar. This is not on the web. It's not web stores. Sometimes they're huge in terms of storage facilities.
Wow. And doing it in one of the most fascinating places in town in Delano. Place that's got so much history.
Yep. I started in the North End up in what they used to call the Barrio, up on 21st and Market, but moved to Delano in 1980. In fact, my first day was Inauguration Day, Ronald Reagan, in that location. Just
Wow.
interestingly,
Yeah.
you think about,
What did it look like at that time?
I like to call it the city's rotting core. It was lots of ramshackle buildings, but beautiful stuff down there, some original. It was, but the city kept wanting to make changes. They kept wanting to do something, but it was just West Wichita, kind of the remnants in the city's rotting core, really.
When do you think Delano started making the change to being what it is today?
Well, we started this group called, it was a West Side group, River West Business Association back in the 80s. And then we pretty much got it figured out pretty quick that to call it Delano and to let the history serve us, which was pretty colorful, turned out that when we started calling it Delano and researching it, it turned out to be a real nice find because of the history, the stories.
There
They're
is
far and wide.
There is so many great stories about Delano. You have one of my favorite quotes I have heard. The streets of Wichita were paved by the sins of Delano.
Yep.
Oh, I love that.
It's a fact.
It is a
Really, yes, because see, even though they started Delano as a separate town per se, it really was the city of Wichita that operated it. The city courts instituted the fines and collected the fines. And I always felt that Delano was started as a way to collect the Cowboys' money through girls, booze, and gambling, yet keep the statistics out of the Wichita paper. Brilliant.
That is
It
brilliant.
was brilliant.
They're pretty smart back then.
They were. And the smart cowtowns did that. Caldwell, Dodge City, everybody had that area of town where the Cowboys could go to blow off steam. And that's where they made the money.
So Delano back then, they didn't have elected officials, even though it was a bandit run town, if you want to call it that. They didn't have elected officials. It was all kind of backdoor through Wichita.
That's pretty much right. But now they had the sheriffs, and actually they were constables, that patrolled Delano, but they were primarily a Wichita.
What are constables?
Well, it's like a police officer.
On horseback?
A lot of them walked the street. There probably were horses. Remember, I mean, this was 1871. They started Delano as a town called Elgin and discovered that it had already been taken. So then in 1872, they came in and said it's going to be called Delano, named after Columbus Delano. He was the Undersecretary of State under U.S. Grant, I believe.
Wow.
That's where they got the name. And everybody nowadays calls it Delano because of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But Delano was how that particular man pronounced his name.
Wow.
Yep. It was different.
I have heard Delano. I never pieced together it was because of
Yeah, that
FDR.
was FDR. That's right. But,
How long did the time period from Delano's lawlessness? How long did that last? Do you know what year to what year that really lasted?
Yeah, pretty much around 1878. It went up to 78, and I think it was around 77 or 78 when they lost the post office or gained a post office. Sorry, I'm not real sure to come to think of it, but that was kind of the time or the period that Delano was less known as that from that point on. And it was the post office. I think it might have went out because I think it was a Delano post office.
The post office thing's a funny. We had John Wise is his name. He's got a YouTube channel called Travel with the Wise Guy.
Oh, yeah?
And how much of the old towns from the turn of the century, from the 1800s and 1900s, whether they lived or died, really revolved around the railroad and the post office. Those are the two biggest reasons why a town is still standing today or is no longer there. It's amazing.
Sense. It does. It makes perfect sense. And the heyday of Delano lasted such a short time. Chicago Avenue, which is now Douglas Avenue, was the Chisholm Trail. And on my plat, the building plats, it still says Chicago Avenue. But after the railroad moved far enough south for the cowboys not to have to drive the cattle that far, it lessened its importance and its impact because the cowboys didn't have to travel far north as Wichita. That's kind of but boy, we had some pretty big trail drives coming up in like 1872 and 1873 were the big years for the cattle drives in Delano.
And so they'd drive them up from Texas, get them to Wichita, and they'd be trained out to Chicago or Denver or somewhere like that.
Put them on the railroad here in Wichita, but then of course you realize the railroad, as it moved south, it changed the whole dynamic or the whole end of the Chisholm Trails. People say, where's the end of the Chisholm Trail? And you almost have to say when, at what period of time. So.
Wow. The post-Civil War westward expansion is so fascinating.
It is.
That time period is just, man, what a crazy time to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, you imagine seeing the Great Plains with all the rolling bison herds? Like, it would have been spectacular. Millions and millions of buffalo as far as the eye can see. And then, after the Civil War, people came out and, in that example, hunted them to extinction.
Nearly.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Right.
Have you read Hunting and Trading on the Great Plains, 1859 to 1870 by James R. Mead? Have you either of you read
No,
that?
but I've heard of this.
Okay, I brought you a copy, and I'm giving
Let's
it to
go.
you. It is so good. It's in the car. I'll get it on the way out.
All right.
This is and he, in 1859, came to Kansas, and then he ended up being a serial entrepreneur. Started a trading post in the Saline River Valley, then near Augusta, Towanda, then Wichita. In fact, one of his trading post locations is 7 blocks from this very location. Interesting. Then he went down to Clearwater, Kansas, Round Pond, Oklahoma, and started these trading posts. He's a brilliant guy. But this book recounts his years as a buffalo hunter and his relationships with very well-known Indians. Jesse Chisholm was a good friend. Santanta, uh, it's great stuff. He was a brilliant guy.
Jealous.
And get this in this book. And they sell this book around town. The Wichita Sedgwick County Historical Museum sells it in their gift shop. I sell it at Hatman Jack's. It's $20. It's beautiful. But in this, Meade talks, he's got like a 7-page treatise on the buffalo. And he describes, of course, he was a buffalo slaughterer, but boy, he paid attention and described how the buffalo could communicate over miles and miles and miles by their bellows. And interesting, just about buffalo, no, but it's lots of stuff. So, good book, you'll get it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Man, it's fascinating how much the natives used the parts of the buffalo. They used all of it. All of the buffalo.
They
As
used all of
opposed-
it, and the buffalo were so important to the health of the Great Plains. Like when they would roll around on the ground, it would cause like holes within the ground where water would get in, and it would just make the prairie grass healthy. Where like cattle destroy it. They destroy the Great Plains. That's why there's basically no Great Plains left. It's because the buffalo are gone and the cattle are here, along with agricultural farming and those other things. But bison are crucial for the health of grassland, of the North American grassland that was here and now is pretty much gone.
And those buffalo wallows still exist to this day, 150 years following the demise of the bison. You still see them. I have a friend in Salina they're all over his place.
Like just holes,
They're just depressions.
not holes, right?
They're
Depressions, a better term.
And they hold water just as you'd say. Really neat stuff.
Wow.
It's easy to get passionate about history, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
I'm so glad you guys are doing this because that's my game, totally. And you know what's great that I love about history is I know so much about this town because I've lived here all my life. And my family's been here since 1876. So
wow.
So, when I drive down a street, I mean it's one of my most pleasurable things. There's the Camel Castle. I know the story. There's this house that was built by Alfred McDonald. Here's this house. It's just great fun.
What are some of the coolest historical houses left standing in Wichita that you would know of?
Well, the Camel Castle was, it's rich. Where it's on North River Boulevard.
You pulled the Camel Castle?
Yeah,
I wanna see
and
this
by the
thing.
way, the family pronounced it Camel, but it was Campbell.
Campbell.
Campbell, the family pronounced it Camel. And his name was Burton Harvey Campbell. Camel. And they called him Barbecue. That was his nickname. And that was his brand.
Holy
And his
cow, look at this
cattle
thing.
ranch. Yep, 1886.
Duh, it looks like a big German castle or something.
Yeah, he brought a lot of the stuff over from Europe. This man, interestingly, was the first superintendent of the XIT ranch in Texas, which was the biggest cattle ranch of the time, 4 years. And Camel was the first superintendent. Then it's a long story. I don't know if you really want me to start it because it's a fascinating story. But needless to say, they kind of booted him off the ranch. He came to the Cherokee Strip in Oklahoma, put in some big ranches, then went to Clark County, Kansas, and started a huge, huge cattle operation. Then moved to Wichita, where he and his wife lived. And she started the Thursday Afternoon Cooking Club in the 1880s that still exists, that is the longest operating cooking club in the United States. They still operate. Maybe they meet once a month, right? There's a great book written on it. It's at the Art Museum. I think they sell it. And so, but even, I think it was the New Yorker that came to him and said, we really want to buy your archives. We want to control this story. We want this story. And of course, in Wichita, they said, no, no, thanks. No, we're keeping it. It's ours.
Unbelievable.
3.5 million. I think we
Yes,
put
yes,
that together,
yeah.
and that'll be our new podcast studio.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys.
We can do it right out of the
You've got
tower.
to make this. You've got to make this happen.
Right out of the tower there.
Truly, it'd be great.
We would love to.
The Lowrys would love you for it.
We'd love to.
What a
They're the
beautiful
custodians.
home.
They're the owners and custodians.
So is it, that's not privately owned right now? Or
It is privately owned.
somebody lives there?
Yeah. Well, they live in the guest cottage, and they keep the castle for other purposes. Sometimes they'll rent it out to big groups. Sometimes it's no longer a bed and breakfast. So I'm in this book club. So get this. This is so cool. It's a separate subject completely. But I'm in this book club that's been in Wichita since 1933. It's called the Wichita Bibliophiles. And so I host once a year on a certain month. So we write papers on various subjects, on various books. And so I did a program on the Camel Castle. At the Camel Castle, they let me set up. I had Joe Stump came in and cooked recipes from that era and that club. Wow. It was the coolest thing ever. I just can't tell you how proud I was of that deal.
Yeah, he's quite the chef, isn't he?
Yeah, he's really good. So this was the invitation.
What were some of the things he cooked?
Oh gosh, actually the
Like buffalo?
recipes no. The recipes came from Mrs. Camel and also from the Douglas Avenue house, which in 1872 was the best food you could buy in Wichita. Really deluxe. And I'm not a foodie, but so I don't exactly remember what we served, but man, it was all from that era, including the drinks, all from that era. And then we did I got Larry Hatterberg came up with me. And then we did this bit on Barbecue Camel and read my paper of the history of Camel and the castle itself.
Did y'all dress up? Like for that time period? You should have.
Well, I don't know if I did or not. I probably wore a nice hat.
I bet you did. I bet you did.
What parts of Wichita history stick out to you that we and people that live here today often miss?
Well, Midtown's pretty cool. And I grew up in Midtown, loved it, just in terms of some of the architecture.
Where's Midtown specifically?
Midtown would be west of Waco. Well, maybe even west of Bidding. West of Bidding all the way out to, say, past Broadway, to the tracks. So Midtown area is, I'd say that's the boundaries, pretty close. So, but, architecturally, there's some really neat houses, that's all. And East Side's great too. But, I grew up on the West Side and I am lots more familiar with it. So, if it's something that people miss, gosh, it's really kind of a lifelong thing to get captured into when you think about the great characters. It's about the people. It's about the characters always. About Wichita Bill, John Noble, who was the finest classically trained painter ever to come out of Wichita. The Noble House over on Waco. And he's the one who painted Cleopatra at the Bath, which was in the Eaton Hotel, the Carey House Hotel, and the bar that Carey Nation threw the rocks at. Just those things. Those things what people drive by and don't maybe know about. But we've got a lot of people that are getting into local history. Some Wichita history from our perspective. There's some pretty good researchers out there that are having fun with it. It's dry as hell to most people probably, but that's okay. Study your Hot Wheels cars. I don't care, but I'm into this.
Yeah, I think it just needs to be explained And I think people just don't know. You're not interested in something you don't know.
True.
And so, yeah, people might not like history, but I think local history, there's a better chance of them liking because they're here.
Yeah.
You know, they can go and see this thing for themselves and imagine what it is. Now, there's some people that still ain't going to like it.
Right.
But I think you might be surprised by the amount of people that would find, be receptive to local history like that if they were just explained it.
I hope that in your travels that you will work to find characters from this town who, there's just great stories about people and what they've done. I mean, stories. And then knowing who they're connected to and who their family is. That's the fascinating part, is the genealogy. And, myself, having been in this town for so many years, I kind of like that aspect of who their parents were and who their cousins were and all those myriad, incredibly small degrees of separation between everybody in this town. It's remarkable. It's no different than any other town, except there's something really unique about this place, I think.
I agree. Something I found very fascinating when I was prepping for this. So the building where you're at, where your shop's at, in the 1920s used to be Wichita Hat Works. And did you discover that later down the line?
I did. It's really an amazing story, but it's not in the location I am now.
Oh.
It was at 577 West Douglas. And so a young guy came in and he goes, "My mom used to work here." And I said, "Where?" He said, "In this location in the 1920s." And I said, "It's kind of impossible," because he couldn't have. And so he said, "I've got a picture," brought the picture, gave me the negatives. I printed them out there on display in my store. And it showed he and his mother and the two Greek gentlemen that owned the joint, because it was always really, Greeks were really keen on the hat business, and people of the Jewish faith, same, kind of were always attracted. So anyway, so there's this picture of these two women and two men in this shop, which was the shop I used to be located in, and has the equipment that I own to this day. And it was called Wichita Hat Works. So that was huge to me. I've always, you always look for those, what's the word? Not sentimental.
A coincidence?
Well, coincidental, but it's bigger, it's serendipitous.
Yeah.
Things that you run into that somehow makes you feel like it empowers, or it makes you feel maybe empowered. can't find the word on
Or like
that.
there was a purpose to this.
Well, yeah. And there's some connection. The connection.
Feels like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Almost.
That's
in a way.
it, pretty much. I agree.
Wow, this is it's almost too much of a coincidence.
Like it was written.
That's the way I felt about it.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah, it's
fascinating.
interesting.
It's amazing. You've styled hats for celebrities. Alan Jackson, Merle Haggard.
Made hats for them.
Wow.
That's pretty amazing. And Hollywood Productions.
Yep.
How are those?
How did Alan Jackson and Merle Haggard order it from you? How'd that whole process go?
Well, the guy that built Hartman Arena, Wink Hartman, said, "Hey, listen, he's going to be our opening act. The first act ever to play at the Hartman Arena was, we just mentioned his name.
Alan Jackson.
Thank you, Alan Jackson." So anyway, so he said, "Will you make him a hat and present it to him on stage?" And I said, "Sure, sounds great." And so they paid for it and everything, and I presented it to him at the opening salvo of Hartman Arena.
You christened Hartman Arena.
I guess. Whatever, maybe so. But there's stories that I've often repeated, but some of my favorites were, like Merle Haggard, because Haggard was an incredible songwriter, not just a great songwriter. A true poet. If you're not into country music, you may not appreciate it, and it may take you a year to figure out how good Haggard was. But anyway, so I met him at the Cotillion. I used to basically knock on the doors of buses of tour buses and say, "Hey, I've always wanted to make a hat for you." That's what I told Haggard. And he goes, "Where do I sign up?" That's exactly what he told me. And so anyway, so he took me to the bus, showed me his hats, and he showed me his hats, and I didn't really like them. And he wore these hats that were really super tall, and I said, "I'll do whatever you want, but this is awful tall." And he goes, "Well," he said, "a little guy needs all the help he can get." And knowing being a hatter, I knew that too much hat makes a guy look smaller than he is. So, but here's the lesson. I made him the tall hat just the way he wanted it, super tall. I made several of them for him. And he performed at the Orpheum. I was up in the very top watching him. And this hat, that in person, totally wore this man, totally made him seem like a little guy. On stage, being too tall, it ended up being majestic. It ended up being perfect from the distance. So the lesson he taught me was it may look crazy in person on the floor, but from stage, it's a different deal. So I'll always be indebted to him for that. You know,
Wow.
that was a cool deal.
Wow.
That is cool.
That's super cool. You met him. Just met him.
So my daughter Kara, so we were at that concert because they gave us some tickets, and I took Kara, my daughter, on the bus, and I have a picture of Kara and Merle, but for some reason I didn't think to get in on that picture but that's okay because she cherishes that thought.
He's not alive anymore, is
No,
he?
he died several years ago. Yeah, he was. But others, I did a lot of stuff for Charlie Daniels, ended up in his catalog nationwide, made a lot of hats that they ordered through his catalog. That was cool. The Riders in the Sky Cowboy Band, those guys are amazing. We've done a lot of hats for them over the years. But yeah, it's crazy. I made a hat for Mickey Spillane, who nobody knows about who he is either. He was a mystery writer, and he wrote his screenplays, and tons of screenplays in Hollywood, knew all the big shots, the tough guys. And so somebody commissioned me to make a hat for him. He came in the store for some deal, and Mickey Spillane came back and he goes, "Young man, George Raft, the famous tough guy actor from the 30s, George Raft taught me how to shape a hat. Where's your steamer?" Because that's how we shape hats. And I was kind of like, well, I don't really let people use my steamer. I didn't tell him that. He came back and did this little bit with the brim over the steam. And that was just cool. That was real cool. George Raft wore them like this. And so, anyway, there you go. There's a story. It's really fun.
Wow. It seems like in the 1900s, hats used to really tell the story of who a person was. I feel like we don't quite get that today, which is kind of sad. It's such a cool style.
Mm-hmm. It's the first thing you see, and the most important or consequential thing that you see. It's that simple.
You think it'll ever come back?
It's doing pretty good.
Hats other than ball caps, to real style.
It's doing pretty well. It's doing real well. The hat business is alive and well. Western hats have just gone through this Yellowstone craze.
Yeah.
And then the Tulsa King deal and the Landman deal, all that stuff contributes to the whole thing. And here's another thing too that I've often known. Do you see what I mean? You ever seen Yellowstone? And Yellowstone's interesting and funny, or not funny, but a lot of people love it. It was a huge, huge hit. The cowboys always have a few reservations about how it is they depict cowboys, because cowboys know how things should be depicted. But just well, I want to go back to another thought, and that is this. Here's why hats are cool. And I think this is what captures people's imagination, and that is that the society we live in has become, over the many years, very homogenized. Very, everybody's doing this, and really to be able, people get to the point where they really want to express their personality. And really be somebody different than what they see around them. And hats do that. Whether you're comfortable or not with it, it makes an impression that you cannot ignore. And it also allows somebody to be somebody that they really want to be. You see what I mean?
Yeah, it's super cool. Like seeing like the old Rat Pack guys. That's the type of attire that I think is super cool.
It's tough, man.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
It is. It's like, damn, that get up is slick.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love it. And back to the Wichita history, there's so many other people here. You know, like Vera Miles,
Yeah.
who worked with Alfred Hitchcock.
Yep.
James Mead, we discussed. You know, there's so many founders of Wichita. Just back to that history, it's like, wow.
Vera Miles was not born here, but she grew up in Delano, south of my store, about 4 blocks. Lived with, I think, her aunt or her grandmother. She was like 1948 Miss Wichita, and she was a beaut. Very, very attractive woman. And so hung around here, graduated from North High School, and she ended up,
I think everyone graduated from North back then.
well, you know, I got to say a few things about North High School. Architecturally, that deal, it's remarkable.
It is remarkable.
But anyway, so back to Vera Miles. So she also, and I collect Wichita art, not just Wichita, but I'm kind of an art guy. I love art. And I have a beautiful portrait of Vera Miles because one of the things she did, she worked as a life drawing model in a local museum. And people going, you know, you've heard about in art classes. It may not have been in your school or many others except for college, but, you know, men would pose nude, and it would be the artist's job to draw or paint. And Vera did that in Wichita. And I happen to have a pastel drawing of her doing that. And it's just remarkable. And she was a Delano character, and it's just really cool.
It's like that scene from the Titanic.
Where they were on the deck.
Well, where they're drawing.
Oh, yeah. yeah, that was pretty saucy. So it really was. So you mentioned somebody else. Oh, well, yeah.
Mead
was, he was a man to be reckoned with for sure. That's a long story, but once you get this book, you might get hooked. You know, hunting and trading on the Great Plains.
I guarantee you I'm going to get hooked.
You are going to get hooked. And that's what hooked me. My sister gave me this book in like 2008 maybe. And man, it just blew me apart on how cool that kind of history was. And in historian circles, you know, because I volunteer at the Historical Museum downtown, the Wichita Sedgwick County Historical Museum. I've volunteered there since the 1980s, okay? So, but usually you would never think of someone as a history groupie, you know, a groupie as in a rock and roll groupie. But there have been people who you could almost say was a history groupie because of James R. Mead, because he was such a cool guy. But his grandson, Schuyler Jones, recently deceased. That was his son. That's the one that everybody just loved. He's actually the one that he would classically, you would call his adoring fans, in some cases, groupies. And I don't mean the overt, you know, groupies has kind of a bad connotation, but I'm talking people who just fall in love with somebody. Schuyler Jones, he had these locks of hair. He was tall. He had this deep, booming voice. He went to East High School, claims he was the singularly worst student to ever graduate from East High School, how he described himself. But so get this, I got to tell you just part of this story. So he traveled around the world as a photographer, and also as he became an anthropologist eventually. Written many books, knew all the famous folks. Went to work at Oxford at the Pitts River Museum and ran it in England. And when he retired, Queen Elizabeth bestowed upon him the CBE, which is a kind of knighthood, Commander of the British Empire. And that's a pretty cool deal. And he's from Wichita. And then he decided, I'm moving back to Wichita. And spent the last 12 years of his life, or 15, here in Wichita. So, and he edited this book I'm going to give you, he and his mother, of his grandfather's memoirs, James R. Mead.
Wow.
I'm excited to listen to it or read it for sure.
We're kind of getting off in the weeds, aren't we?
Yeah.
No, you want to hear? You want to hear a kind of a wild thing I heard about North High?
Yeah.
So my business partner,
Yep.
David Jabara, is
Yep.
a North High graduate.
Oh, yeah.
He's probably 70-ish.
He's about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we have fire drills and whatnot at Bishop Carroll. They had fire drills at North High even when he was going through.
He went
said-
to BC.
He went to North.
Oh,
David
that's
did.
right. He did.
Yep.
Sorry.
Proud North High.
yeah.
But he said that his mother would have sandbag drills for when the Arkansas River would start flooding.
right.
All the students would carry sandbags out, throw them on the banks to save the school from the flood.
Whoa.
Yeah,
All
how
up and down
crazy
the-
is that?
All up and down the river. That's exactly right. My family
They
did
sound a lot
too.
more fun than fire drills.
Yeah, my family did too. My oldest brother helped my dad. My brother's job was to hold the sacks. We grew up at 18th and Wellington Place. It was in the Clapp compound. That's a long story. Beautiful home, still there. Nice place. Anyway, right on the river, basically, pretty close to it. Had a lot of trouble with flooding. Jabari, he is a character.
Yes, he is.
He grew up in Indian Hills. Well,
Yes.
not quite, just north.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good man.
Yeah.
He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
But North High, a couple things about North High that's real cool. One is, it was designed by Glenn Thomas, who was the architect. But the motifs, that wonderful motifs, including the geometric bas reliefs, basically on the top of the building, and the Manisa Bridge, those were all designed by a guy named Bruce Moore, who was from Burns, Kansas, and became an internationally famous sculptor. But while he was in town, he did that project. He did the Striding Panther, the mascot of East High School. He did lots of stuff. And I like his stuff a lot.
Who did the keeper?
That was Black Bear Bosun. He lived across the street from me. Which
Really?
was kind of cool. Well, before I lived there.
What was kind of the genesis of the keeper?
Don't know. Really not sure.
We should dive into that.
Now he had a Black Bear Bosun had his studio in Delano for several years. He worked at Boeing in their commercial art department, but also had a studio in West Douglas. If you've never seen this, this is cool. The Broadview Hotel,
Yeah.
built in 21, they have one of their ballrooms has this beautiful mosaic, this Black Bear Bosun mosaic. All the little tiny pieces of ceramic or glass. It's pretty neat.
He also has paintings, doesn't he? Because I've been to the Wichita Art Museum, and there are some super great paintings from him of Wild West sort of stuff.
He had a lot of followers. He was popular.
Well, I mean, the keeper kind of speaks for itself.
There's
And
a
just
lot of
magnificence.
truly. Yeah, he's that's become very iconic, as evidenced by your photograph of the keeper in the plains.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
hey,
that
that's in
too.
your logo too.
Yep.
Right.
It's in the logo,
Dude.
and the photograph's taken by Blake. Took that
Dude,
himself.
cool. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, super cool. Very iconic.
Very
Wichita's
iconic.
really leaned into it.
As they
I
should.
think so too. I think so too. So, the Wichita Sedgwick County Historical Museum, I got to give a quick plug for them because this is a museum that represents local history in such an important way, I think, and they have a staff that's lean and mean. I mean, they do things. So few people do so many things. Their curator, the executive director, the collections that they've been able to preserve and maintain. If people have not been there lately, I urge you to go. Just look up the hours on the website.
Where is it?
It's at William and Main Street, across from the old library, the old brutalist library, designed library. It's right across. It's in the old city hall with the big clock tower. That is where it is. And, it's got some great stuff up there. And they changed stuff up a lot. So just urging people, the Wichita Sedgwick County Historical Museum, check it out. It's real cool.
I will.
Too bad Tremont Street's not still around, or we'd plug that too.
Well, if Tremont Street was still around, we would have absolutely no law enforcement surrounding us. Because it had opium dens. You remember, you've read that Joe Stump's book.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was a seedy deal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Tremont Street.
Yeah.
Lusty, boozy, bloody.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of...
Scroll down a little, Blake.
Joe was nice enough to, in one of my bibliophile presentations, he presented this book, talked about it. It was really great.
Yeah, city officials regularly pledged to clean up Tremont, but just as many were willing to look the other way or even take a cut of the action, which explains why Tremont enjoyed a long, lusty, boozy, bloody run.
That's right.
Tremont Street sat where South St. Francis Street is located today. The row started a block or two south of Douglas, about where Intrust Bank Arena now stands.
Correct. That's right.
You're sitting on some history when you're at Intrust Bank Arena.
You know,
That's amazing.
Really an interesting part of Wichita history, and it's always been one of my favorites. Is the seedier side. I mean the I don't know how else to put it. I mean, there's just been some really interesting stuff, like during the bootlegging era. You know, the state was dry for longer than any other state in the United States except one other. So basically, from 1888 to 1948, we were dry. So there's a lot of bootlegging going on, and boy, I'm telling you, the stories there, especially.
Wow.
Well, the Volstead Act, I think, is one that when they repealed, you know, you would be able to drink, but Kansas did not follow suit. And we've had dry counties up until recent years in Kansas, interestingly. But bootlegging era, and this is fascinating to me, Western Sedgwick County. Lots of people of German descent. Loved their beer. Could not really be told not to like their beer. And I don't mean any disrespect, you understand. But bootlegging in Kansas, the two biggest counties, one was Sedgwick or Reno, and then there was one in southeastern Kansas where lots of Italian immigrants came to get into strip mining down there. So there were enormous bootlegging operations in western Sedgwick County. But think about this. During the Depression, when wheat may have been 15 cents a bushel, you had a German family that may have had 12 kids. Think about this. And at 15 cents a bushel, had a heck of a time making a living. So what'd they do? They made whiskey and did really well at it. In fact, there were some whiskeys that were made in western Sedgwick County that were quite famous in Chicago. One was Andale Rye. Andale Rye. You could find it on some of the whatever they called the mafia at the time. There were bars in Chicago. It was pretty top shelf stuff. Andale Rye whiskey. It's a pretty big deal. And there were lots of money made. And
Wow. That's fascinating.
that's the fun part.
How do you know this stuff?
I don't know. I just like it.
That's a great little.
So, and I did a program
great
on
little thing
bootlegging in Sedgwick County. I wrote a paper on it. You know, that's the stuff I do. That's the stuff this book club does. It's really, there's 12 members. 12 members. That's it. Once a month, one person presents, where you feed the other 11. You either write a paper or make a presentation, and you provide alcoholic beverages. And it's been that way for 93 years, continuously. Pretty neat.
That is neat.
Can you only have 12?
Well, and what are you going to do? Have three meetings a month?
Don't know if someone had to die for someone else to get in.
Well, I wouldn't say it was that exclusive, but I will say this, that some of the members, it was founded by a guy named Robert Aitchison, who he in himself was a brilliant man. He was a treasurer of McCormick Armstrong Printing Company. He was a internationally known bibliophile and a cartographer. Maps, loved maps. But other people that were in that, Craig Miner, professor of history at Wichita State, Dr. Ed Tian. For local historians, Ed Tian, the Tian notes. You could look them up and find out so much great stuff about Wichita history through Ed Tian. He lived on North River Boulevard. You drive down North River Boulevard, hey, there was Ed Tian's house. There was Barbecue Camel's house. There was, you know what I'm saying? That's what's fun about this stuff.
Was it true when Kansas was a dry state? If you flew over Kansas, the airplane would have to stop serving alcohol while over Kansas.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And
How stupid is that?
Does
Kansas own the
next thing
air
I was gonna
above
ask.
it? Like,
legally,
what in the
that's
world?
what our attorney general, whose name was Vern Miller, said, and that law was observed. And he was a wild man. He was from Hoover's Orchard. You ever heard about that? He was out west, like West Street and Maple, around in there. Hoover's Orchard, and it was tough, man, tough. And he grew up there, as a tough kid. Became sheriff, then attorney general. So did Bob Steffen. He was police officer, and then became attorney general. They were on the streets, tough, and Vern Miller, they'd bet him to do stuff, and he'd take it, man. It's like somebody said, I bet you can't drive your Harley and go underneath, those the back of a truck. I bet you can't lay it
decapitate
down.
yourself.
Lay it down and then come back up. I bet you can't do it. And he did it. He was that kind of a guy. And I don't know. There's some great stories on Bob Steffen, too. But like
That's
I
a
said,
little
it's
wild.
really easy to get into the weeds on this stuff, you guys. I mean, but there it is. Here are the weeds.
Yeah. That had to be so crazy to be in the bootlegging game during Prohibition. My God.
He was all over Wichita.
That's how NASCAR started.
That's right. Jimmy Johnson. Wasn't that his name?
I don't know. He was a great NASCAR driver, that guy, but he was modern.
Yeah, maybe so.
That's how it all started.
That's
Did
how
you know
they
that?
fired those cars up.
I think so.
That's right.
They'd pump those cars full of God knows what, and they would fly. And then they'd all get together and race. And then, boom, NASCAR.
That's right. That's exactly right. That is-
Amazing.
You get away from the cops.
yeah,
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. That's Americana right there.
it is.
That is.
And they had so many interesting ways of dispensing the booze, too. Like there was a family out in near wherever, Andale maybe, and they had fence posts with a disc on the bottom welded to it, and they'd slip the booze under there, and you'd lean it over to get your booze. There was a guy on South Broadway in this area they used to call Hectorville, south of the John Mack Bridge, and it was tough, and there were bootleggers and gambling and girls. I mean, there's always been places around that this stuff happened, and sometimes back then the cops had just turned a blind eye, or more precisely, they would wait 15 minutes before they responded to a call, was the word of what happened. Sometimes, like in this Hectorville, south of the John.
And
Mack.
what's the reasoning behind that?
Just let them clean up their own mess. Let the law come into it a little bit late. There's some big folks that made their big money. There's folks that made big money down there. Harry Shepler, you ever heard of him?
CH?
Harry Shepler.
Last name. Oh, Shepler. I thought
Shepler.
you said Chaplin.
Sorry. No, he started a little Western store called Shepler's.
Okay. Yeah. I know
Sold
now.
sold it.
He made some money then.
He did pretty well. But that's kind of how he made his money.
Wow.
More than kind of.
Man, that's amazing.
He's been dead for years. And people used to
You're
really
not
be
snitching on him.
He was a great man and a great friend to the Western industry. He was a great friend to the cowboy. Very well respected. You can't say a mean thing about him. A lot of people bootlegged, and that's how they made their extra money, or a lot of money.
Yeah.
Wild time.
Yep.
Wild time.
Yep.
Wheat,
So-
15 cents a barrel. You got 12 kids. Yeah.
I mean, it puts
Can
it
you
in
blame them for
perspective.
turning in Yeah. I mean, what?
Yep.
Like 9 of my children are going to starve or I'll bootleg. Not a terribly difficult decision there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was, like I said, some real big operators out. One really big one, but I really rather not mention their name because their family's still hanging around. Pretty active family. But they make
After the pod.
yeah, I'll tell you about it. It's funny.
All right.
Well, here's the deal too, though. You make all this money, and you legitimate. You go legitimate. I mean, that's the way the mafia always said they were to do it. And I'm not speaking from experience, believe you me, but this is just what people did. They found a way to wash their money. So it's as old as it's age old.
Yeah. It's pretty fascinating. I mean, we've got the ringleader of it all hanging back there with Al Capone.
Who's that? What's that?
We
Oh,
got
you
the
sure do.
Ringleader of it all
Oh yeah.
with Al Capone right there.
Yeah. They got him on tax evasion, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Finally got him.
Yep.
Yeah. Chicago.
Yep. Tax evasion that died of syphilis.
That's pretty, boy.
A guy like him.
He was rolling, man. He sure had the dough.
Oh yeah.
Lots, yep. I'm interested in that too. And people are fascinated with that stuff, I think. The whole, like The Godfather. You've seen The Godfather?
Mm-hmm.
How many times? Just once?
Yeah, not enough.
Just
Not enough.
curious. I don't know. I'm just saying that there's a fascination with the seedier side of life. And it exists everywhere.
Yeah, there's something romantic about it. Looking back on the past and seeing those people doing that wild stuff.
Maybe. Romantic, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. I think like a lot of the Wild West is romantic because I think that was actually incredibly brutal and not a fun time to be living for the vast majority of people. Yet you look on it and you kind of, from our perspective, look at it as a free way of life. It's an open range. There's no laws, all kinds of stuff. But, your chances of survival probably weren't great back on the open frontier.
It's tough. Cowboys. It was a tough life for a cowboy, that's for sure.
Yeah. You know anything about the Comanches?
Sure do.
You ever read Empire of the Summer Moon?
Sure have.
Oh my goodness.
It's one of my favorites, man.
That book is crazy.
They were tough as nails.
There's just about
The best horseman. Almost
yeah.
bar none.
yeah,
Of
Crazy
any native
horseman.
tribe, for one thing.
crazy horsemen. And there's not a lot of worse ways to go than being captured by a Comanche.
Mm-mm.
They were going to do some pretty horrible things to you.
That's right.
And maybe like lengthen it out too. Like not immediately.
Yeah, and they occupied part of
Bad.
Kansas,
Bad,
southwestern Kansas. The Comanches were here.
Medicine Lodge Treaty was
Yep.
the Comanches and whatever branch of the United States military.
Right.
Medicine Lodge.
Yeah. We had a big treaty signed up here north of Wichita, up there by the is it 53rd or 61st. Go to the historical museum and check it out. They've got a map on the third floor of the meadow where this peace treaty was signed, and it tells you who was all there, including James R. Meade, which is cool. So
Man, that is cool.
he was an historian, man. He was top notch. Ended up being president of the Kansas State Historical Museum in Topeka, of their board, and again a serial entrepreneur. His owned lots and tons of property, but hit the bust in the late 80s. We had a big bust, financial bust in Wichita, and he paid all his bills and got back on his feet. But he, anyway.
How does one city have a bust? Like a city like even the size of Wichita where it's not that big. How does a city, I guess if like the airline, let's say Boeing left, city would have a huge bust.
It's very cyclical, and it has had. I mean, this is a town that's gone bust many times for various reasons, and aircraft has been one of them. So we're kind of on an upward spiral, I think, right now in terms of the economy of our town. I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Be cool.
Yeah,
I hope it's the case. So anyway,
yeah, aviation seems to be trending upward. I saw Wichita just recently won a big job from, oh man, was it
several
Textron?
things. Yeah, and I think what is it?
Is it a Textron job that
Yeah, it's
got one?
Textron because they're talking about bringing a helicopter division here maybe, and I don't know exactly.
I was looking at it at the Journal the other day.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, it seemed like jobs.
yep,
So that's fantastic.
that's what I say.
Yeah. I do want to get your thoughts on what's going on downtown. What do you think about the stadium and the new paid parking?
Oh, you would bring that up, wouldn't you? Well, I understand the city's perspective on paid parking. I will say this, and we've fought paid parking in Delano all along, and only for very good reasons. And that is that we're not like downtown. We don't have a lot of ancillary parking lots. We have Douglas Avenue and not a whole lot behind. We do now, but so much of the parking that exists in Delano, especially behind the Monarch, next to the ball field, that's all privately owned now. Now, we do have a bus garage going in, which is going to have public parking 2 blocks south of Hatman Jack's. And so they want to get that open and then revisit this paid parking thing. Delano has established a very unique identity, and it's become a very destination commercial area in the state. There's no question about it. The character of the businesses and the investments that are being made, and hell, we've got a little we got a little bit of TIF money. We got a clock tower put in and certain infrastructure, and which made it desirable and a destination. But there just are a lot of businesses. Bricks and mortar is not an easy business, and we, in my opinion, need every advantage we can possibly find. And those parking spaces are worth a lot of money to each and every one of us, especially that require that have customers walk-in traffic. So the way it's worked downtown, I use it. I don't have a big problem with it. I think cultural institutions are having a really tough time with it, especially cultural institutions that have an older demographic. More and more people just do not want to do that. And I find it very simple, but a lot of people don't. So I'm off in the weeds on this, but basically, we'll face that parking situation like we faced it the last time, and we'll see what we're able to negotiate, because they've been good about negotiating with us. They really have. The city, I mean, but we're kind of loudmouths too.
Sometimes need to be.
Sometimes need to be. That's right. And I've been over there on and off since 1980. So, I was there when it was the city's rotting core. So, is that enough about parking? Can we move on?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Although I did see something where if you back in, you get in trouble.
Well,
see that?
I'll tell you, it's a tough sell. It's always been a tough sell. And I feel for
the government, man.
I do, but I feel for both sides of the deal. I really kind of do, just in the sense that, and
I do too, but the inefficiency of it is just damning.
Yep.
Like parking backwards throws a wrench into the thing. Like, God, can we just be a little bit better?
just get you a drone and have it do it.
I don't know if I want that.
After all,
But just, I don't know.
Well,
The government is just a headache.
Well, PR is a delicate thing. PR is a tough thing to manage sometimes. And, not everybody's good at it. And sometimes it just blows back. So,
Yeah.
but I'm sure proud of Delano. It's good.
It's great. So many great restaurants, so many great other businesses. It's great.
And
great part of town.
nice and good real estate, um, um, you know, some quality stuff going up. And there's a few people over there development wise that are really doing a great job, and they're not doing this slap it up. They're doing some quality stuff, either using the original architecture or not. They're making some really destination places down there. It's just fabulous.
Yeah, it's great.
It really is. So
It's fantastic. Well, sir, you got anything for us?
I don't think so.
That wraps up about all I had. I
All
mean,
right.
what you've done is phenomenal. Congratulations.
Well.
50 years.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I mean, that's amazing.
Well, it's a tough, retail's a tough racket, but, it's just find what you're passionate about. And that's kind of the bottom line, and work hard. And all you have is your word. I tell young people this a lot. I just say, look, all you ever have is your word. And as soon as you sell that down the street, you're in trouble. But if your integrity means something, you can take it anywhere. You just really can. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying this is a point of philosophy that I think everybody should understand. That's all.
That's a great message for young people.
It is. I agree.
Fantastic. Troy, you got anything, man?
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Me
This was
too.
neat.
It's fun. Me too. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. Keep up the good work.
We
We
will
will.
try.
Good deal.